Rob, it's great to see you. Thank you for joining me from Cape Town. I'm looking forward to seeing you in October. Now, our autumn lectures in London, the Battle of Isandlwana, and in Gloucestershire, the history of Rorke's Drift. Two subjects very close to my heart. I know that you're excited about coming to deliver these steps lectures. I know that you're excited about the venues. I know that you're excited about the South African wine. I know that you're looking forward to the music, both in London and Gloucestershire, and the dancing in London. All of these things. But the subject matter, I want to ask you a single question. What is it that you think still makes these stories so special, so that makes you want to deliver these lectures again and again? And what do you think it is about them that keeps them so relevant to the world we live in today?
Giles, look, it's always a treat to see you. We have a more than 20-year association now, a long and happy one, and I'm really looking forward to this lecture series in October in England and our continuation of the relationship between myself and Steps. Regarding your question, and it's a marvelous question, you know, in 1999, on the 120th anniversary of these battles, a church service took place, which I will explain in detail during my lecture at Rorke's Drift. David Rattray was still alive then and was lucky enough to attend the lecture. At the end of it, the Welshmen, including the band, left the instruments at their feet, and they stood up and unaccompanied they sang Men of Harlech. Whereupon the roughly 3,000 Zulus present stood up and began to sway and to hum, and they broke into song and they sang the Ikhubu. That's a song of honor that the Zulu warriors sing for the dead when they're tying their dead to a shield to be pulled away after a battle. And David looked around and he said there weren't many dry cheeks. And he became utterly convinced that this was no longer really a story about war, but a story about human beings. Not a tale about conflict, but a tale about compassion, and that there were lessons in reconciliation and forgiveness for us all to extract from these tales. And with that as the preface, I want to say this. I think that in 1879, there was a tremendous spirit about the noble savage. Here were British soldiers 6,000 miles from home fighting for a shilling a day. I feel somewhat disengaged. Their tour of duty was over. They should have really been on their ships home, facing an enemy who was defending his future, his family, his homeland, his cattle herds, and so forth. A war that was really thrust upon the Zulus. A war in which there was no quarter given. There were also no prisoners taken. It was death or glory, death or survival. There were no prisoners taken. And I think that there's something intrinsic about the British psychology and the Zulu psychology that responds upon that notion with a deep, innate respect. There are times where British columns and Zulu columns in this war passed one another at a time of war without firing a shot. Generally, the battles never took place at night. Rorke's Drift was a complete anomaly. So you could see your opponent, you could look him in the eye, and often the fighting was hand to hand. In it all, in a very strange set of circumstances and a rather bizarre twist, the last Napoleon, effectively Napoleon IV, Louis Jean-Joseph Napoleon, was killed in a strange ambush type situation on the 1st of June, 1879. Now, when people approach me with this question and they say, why is it that the Anglo-Zulu War attracts such attention and popularity and the Anglo-Boer War 20 years later does not? Much about the answer to your question rests in that. The Boer War saw the British really being made to look the laughing stock by the Boers, the introduction of scorched earth and concentration camps, long distance fighting, a lot of animosity, prisoners taken. And I think that the British, with their innate sense of fairness, battled to look objectively at the Anglo-Boer War. They feel a sense of shame, perhaps, or responsibility for what happened, which is not the case with the Anglo-Zulu War. The Anglo-Zulu War saw the British afterwards trying hard to reconcile, to forgive. They treated King Khetshwayo when he was in exile with great dignity and respect. He lived in London. He saw Queen Victoria twice on the Isle of Wight. And all of those encounters created further respect and dignity for this apparently savage king who'd given the British Army such a thrashing at Isandlwana. Now, I could probably take an hour to answer your question, but I think, and I like to believe, that somewhere in what I've said already answers why these stories are still so special today. To continue in that vein, I think that there are lessons for us all to extract from these stories in terms of reconciliation and forgiveness, respect of one's contemporaries or one's enemy, the lack or depth of local knowledge. We have to look at the complacency, some would go so far as to say the arrogance of the British in terms of how they felt about the Zulus at the start of the war. Of course, the 1963 movie Zulu, which launched Michael Caine's career, has done a huge deal in terms of promoting the Anglo-Zulu War, particularly the Battle of Rorke. Zulu Dawn, after Cy Enfield had died, it was directed by somebody different and didn't achieve the same sensibility and balance that Zulu achieved. But Zulu has done a great deal to heighten the awareness of the Anglo-Zulu War and is played by the BBC, I think, most Boxing Days in England still. We have people who come out here and can give me the script of Zulu from one end to the other. But Giles, I feel like I'm babbling on a little here, and I hope I haven't gone off peak or off subject. Bring me back to what you asked initially, please.
That was, I think you've answered pretty much all of it, which is, why are they so special and what relevance are they today in a world where conflict seems to be increasingly the norm? I think these notions of respect and forgiveness, I think, are all too relevant. But you've already touched on it, the end of the Napoleonic line. But we're going to hear about entomology, aren't we? We're going to hear about romance. We're going to hear love stories, battles of great heroism, cowardice. We're going to right some wrongs in the accuracy around certain characters. But I think you've answered my question, so I have one more for you. I know that you're excited about how we're staging the lectures this year. Do you think we run the risks, especially in Gloucester, but I think also in London, of people having tears on their cheeks again?
That is a very, very interesting question. I was lucky enough to do a presentation last night in Cape Town about Rorke, and there were many men and women who freely shed tears during that talk. And that was a shortened version of the full tour that we do at Rorke. And I always say to folks, I think it's a shame when you're invited on holiday or you're invited out to a lecture to be left in tears. But these stories are triumphs of the human spirit, and they're incredible kaleidoscopes of human character and human nature. And I like to believe that there may well be a damp cheek or two at both of your set venues, exquisite venues for the lectures and the subjects you've chosen, respectively, for London and Gloucestershire, where Henry Hook VC was buried.
You've given away one of the secrets, but that's brilliant. Rob, thank you very much indeed.
Well, you have the ability to edit as you see fit, Giles.
You are one person who I wouldn't dream of editing. Rob, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in October. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Giles. Thank you for your time and your input. Bye-bye.